As introduction from London, I'm Huynh, legal director in KPMG. So my voice is not too loud. If anything is unclear or you have any question, just let me know. So today we would like to provide an overview on some key change under the new land law that we select to present and discuss today. That's not the only thing, but something that we think that is relevant to the real estate projects, and we want to present today. So as you know that the National Assembly just adopted the new land law like 4 months ago in January 2024, and with the land law and the real estate business law and the residential housing law, we have three key fundamental laws dealing with the real estate projects. So all of the 3 laws are going to take effect on the 1st of January of 2025. But now the government is making some proposal to the National Assembly so that the new land law can take effect 6 months earlier, maybe from this July. So the first key change that we would like to discuss today is about the definition of foreign invested company. So I think that there's some foreign real estate developer here. So we need to consider again, if we are considered as a foreign invested enterprise with subject to the limitation and condition applicable to foreign invested developer. Like under the current law, I mean the land law 2013, a summary right here, you can see that the definition of foreign invested enterprise include 100 foreign invested enterprise, joint venture enterprise, and Vietnamese enterprise in which the foreign investor has invested into. From lawyers' perspective, we have so many back and forth discussion on this definition when we consider this definition in the context of investment law as well. For example, in one case that the subsidiary of foreign invested company in Vietnam, we so-called the level 2 subsidiary in Vietnam. Under the investment law, they are the deemed foreign investor that need to follow the investment condition and procedure applicable to foreign investor. But the current law, I mean the law 2013, is it not crystal clear that such kind of level 2 subsidiary also subject to the condition and limitation applicable to foreign invested developer? And now we have the clear answer, because the land law just refer to the investment law to determine which one is considered the second, like the foreign invested developer. So it's now cover the level 2 subsidiary in Vietnam. So from lawyer perspective, this change is good because we are now clear the legal basic to advise the structure for the developer in the market. But with some developer that they have a foreign investor company in their group structure, they need to revisit their group structure again to see if any second level subsidiary may become the foreign invested player, and they need to review their business model. For example, for like in case of future house, when the local buyer can collect up to 70% of the purchase right from the buyer before the handing stage to the customer. But for the foreign invested developer, they only collect 50% of it. So that's also the thing about the cash flow, and also relate to the cash flow issue. I would like to discuss about the land rental payment. And we observe that the law provide more limited case for the lump sum land rental payment. It means that now only the 3 group of projects can apply for lump sum payment, including agriculture, forestation, agricultural, the industrial park project, and the project for tourism and office purpose, and the project for social housing for lease. So it means that if your new project is not eligible for land allocation with land use fees, are not within this kind of group of projects, we need to apply for annual land rental payment. So the key reason for such change is that the state want to reduce the financial burden of the investor at the beginning stage, because they don't need to like get a lot of money to make the one-up payment. But from the other side, we can see that the valuation of the project with the one-up payment when the investor already pay all of the land rental must be higher than the project with annual land rental. And some people are also concerned that if such kind of change may pose challenge to the existing investor, because it's more difficult for them to welcome to the new investor when they need additional funds to develop the project later. And with the annual land rental payment, you are only allowed to mortgage the asset attached to land to the bank only. And you cannot deal with the revenue right, although this is one of the key fundamental assets of your project. And the next issue is the thing that very interesting to me in that, and also one of the key that Giang just shared with me when we first met together today, is that a lot of challenge and delay relate to the residential house project in the market for long, and the developer want to have a more better policy for such kind of project. And actually, we have the chance to do due diligence on some commercial project developer. And when we did due diligence on their project portfolio around some 100 hectares with more than 20 or 30 projects, and we can observe that really a half of the project are pending because of licensing procedure about because they have to buy some residential land so that they can develop the project site, and also some matter about the zoning and also investment procedure. So let me go into a bit detail. When the investor have the project site, they need the project site needs to be the residential land, or a part of it needs to be the residential land already. So in such a case, they will be eligible for applicable for investment approval for the housing commercial projects. But if their project site is just like agricultural land or just the business land only, they cannot apply. And there's some difficulty because the inconsistency between the land procedure and also investment procedure. So if you apply for the investment project policy, you need to complete the land conversation procedure. But under the land regulation, you need to have some kind of investment approval so that you can convert the land. So in fact, we see some commercial house project, they need to manage to revise some zoning approval, the land zoning, and also land usage of the provincial level. And then if the project land has some agricultural land, they need to get special approval so that they can acquire some kind of land before getting the investment approval. And actually, that I understand that there's so many back and forth discussion on this matter during consideration of the land law. But under the land law, this issue is still very silent. But there is still a hope, because the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment has prepared a resolution to issue a pilot scheme to tackle some kind of this issue, because the standing committee of the Central Committee of the Communist Party instruct to have the pilot plan to use the non-residential land for the commercial housing projects. And I'm aware that there already the resolution, the direct resolution, so that they will allow the investor who can acquire not only the residential but also the other kind of land which are eligible for transfer to develop the commercial housing. And that's the robot timeline for the pilot scheme is about 5 years. So they want to test in the next 5 years, from 2025 until the end of 2029, to see if the kind of scheme may cause any problem to the society and something like that. So we really hope to see the development in such kind of scheme so that so many land bank in the market can put into the project. And we have some other update, and my director and then will take it over.
So for the next issue that I think is very important, relevant, and near and dear to my heart is, right now, under the new land law, VQ, overseas Vietnamese are allowed to buy and own land, right? But I do want to temper expectations a bit, because VQ in the definition, for Vietnamese we hear it's very broad, right? But in the law, it's actually a little bit more narrow than that. So the definition in the law, and with reference to other laws and decrees, it's mainly targeting overseas Vietnamese who immigrated in the past 10 or 15 years, who have retained their citizenship, right? Who are we talking about? People who've been sponsored to move to the U.S., Australia, people who are working overseas, Vietnamese who are working overseas. Labor outsourcing is big in Vietnam as well. A lot of people are working in Korea, Japan, and they send money back home, right? A lot of times that money is invested into real estate. But the issue is that since they're not here, their name, they're not eligible to have the rent roll. So typically they ask relatives, to put their name on the title documents. And of course, that's going to lead to a lot of dispute, and it doesn't really encourage certainty or predictability in terms of overseas Vietnamese making investments. But under the new land law, there's certainty now that those individuals, basically those who have retained Vietnamese citizenship, they are allowed to have their name on the title document. We're talking about the land use right? So that's going to open up the market to these types of market participants, whereas before they had to rely on their relatives in Vietnam. However, the definition doesn't include sort of overseas Vietnamese who left long ago, 70s and 80s, because those people essentially gave up their Vietnamese citizenship. Right? There is a process for them to obtain Vietnamese citizenship again, but it's a process that you need to go through. Those individuals are still allowed to, invest in Vietnam's real estate market, but it has to be within designated projects, condos, apartments, and other projects where, similar to foreigners, they're allowed to make investment and own the unit, but it wouldn't be on a quote-unquote freehold basis, but more on a leasehold basis. Right? This is an encouraging development, but we will have to see, because right now, we all see how the market's doing. There's a major liquidity issue. Hopefully, when this law comes into effect, you're going to see more remittance come back into Vietnam and flow into the real estate market. At least that's the hope, right? Okay. And look, I just want to touch on, because this is my wheelhouse, this is my area of focus, is on the sort of Vietnam M&A sort of market in general. So I just want to touch on some key highlights and data points, because my belief is the past is prologue. You look at the past, because that will inform you in terms of how things will be in the future. Not always 100%, but it's a good gauge. So, in terms of the macros, Vietnam remains a very attractive market. If you see in the past 2-3 years, real estate is always top 3, right? Aside from real estate, you have the social infrastructure that's attracting a lot of investment into, say, healthcare, education, consumer products. I'll be very honest with you. The last quarter of last year up to first quarter of this year, M&A was way down. Right? M&A transactions, especially in real estate, I have to say, was very, very quiet. Luckily, we're seeing a pickup in the past 2 months or so. there's definitely more interest in the Vietnam market, including hospitality, some residential, but it's mainly focused on commercial and industrial. So that's where we're seeing a lot of movement, rightly so, because I think everyone is taking a wait-and-see position to see how the new land law is going to be implemented, where are the pain points. So I think M&A transactions in real estate will still be slow for 2024, but hoping for a dramatic pickup in 2025. And just some key highlights. Who are the investors that we're seeing, right? It's generally, you have your Japanese, Singaporeans, Americans. They're very inquisitive in the market. Just sharing my personal experience, this really reflects sort of my client list. Right? I do have a lot of Japanese clients, American clients. They're inquisitive in many areas, but again, the focus is on real estate and also manufacturing. I think Vietnam, and we see this, Vietnam is a major beneficiary of the trade war between the US and China, right? The US recently slapped tariffs on Chinese EVs, and then China most likely will respond in kind. So that's why we're seeing a lot of manufacturers, the likes of Apple, Foxconn, they moved out of China, right? Where are they going? Most of them are coming to Vietnam. We're seeing that right now in the market. Vietnam, India, Malaysia. So Vietnam is still, will be a major beneficiary going forward. However, we are getting feedback from clients in terms of uncertainty, in terms of the political situation, right? People are, again, a bit concerned of the recent changes and how that's going to impact their investments now and going forward. But our view is that, regardless of the changes in Vietnam, the overall trajectory, right, and the policies of Vietnam will remain stable and very focused on spurring trade between our partners. So that's where we're seeing the current landscape, and then I'll pass it to Christine to discuss the recent challenges, lessons learned, and also the opportunities.
Okay, thank you. And my part is land price. This is a small part in the Land Law 2024. Only, I think, 5 articles regulating the land price, but I think it's very important. This is where we'll determine the land price, that land use fee, and land compensation, which is, I'm sure most of you will be interested in. So first of all, land valuation principle. Back into the previous land law, the law regulating that the principle of valuing the land must be consistent with popular land price on the market with same land uses. So it refers to transaction, winning auction prices, and collected from the data. However, in Land Law 2024, they emphasize on the market principle when valuing the land. So what does it mean? It means that the land price now will be a market value. And as defined by IVSC, the market value is the estimated amount between the willing buyer and the willing seller in the arm's length transaction. So what it tells you, when the land value reflects the market value is reflect the knowledge of buyers and sellers, hundreds and thousands of buyers and sellers in the market. So everybody understands it clearly about the value, and it brings the efficiency. So what does it mean? It means that the land will go to the person or those who value it the most, so the highest value, and then it will facilitate the efficient of land allocation. It also leads to the transparency. When the land value align with the market value, buyers and sellers understand it, the published data of sales transaction, everyone can access it, and then it will bring the transparency. And it make it easier to buy and sell land, which will increase the liquidity. Within the Article 158 of Land Law 2024, it also regulates the valuation methodology and circumstances to apply which methodology, and also the source of inputs. Why in the previous law there was no clear or specific implication regulations. So in here, I want to focus on valuation methodology. So previously, the previous law just stipulated 5 methods: comparison, deduction, income, residual, and adjustment coefficient. The new law stipulated only 4 methods. The deduction is like incorporated within the comparison. And since within the 4 methods, I just want to focus on 2 methods, which is comparison and the residual. These are the 2 methods that most commonly used when I do the value for the development side. So direct comparison. Direct comparison simply look at the sales price, sales transaction of similar properties in the market, and then we do the compare or contrast to derive the subject property's value. Shortfalls. So at the definition, we look at the similar property. So for the not scale or townhouse or apartment, there can be a lot of transaction. But for the big development side, no, there are not many, or very challenging to have to find the similar evidence. So limited data and data accuracy may lead to the inaccurate valuation. After collecting data, we have to do the adjustment. This step can have the subjective adjustment and lead to the bias valuation. The last shortfall to us is that it's very difficult to use direct comparison to value a mixed-use development, because in the mixed-use development you have different components within, and it's even more challenging or more difficult to find the 2 identical projects. So, however, it does offer benefits. It's quick, simple, straightforward. Everyone can understand it. And since it's simple, so with time efficiency, we can do it in 2-3 days. And it relies on actual transaction data. So if there are many identical properties, for example, apartment or townhouses, then it relies on actual transaction data and reduce the subjectivity. The residual. So end of last year, there was a discussion whether to keep the residual method or not, but luckily we kept it. And residual focus on the development potential of the project, and basically it takes the estimated revenues and deducted estimated costs to get the residual, and that value is reflecting the land value. Benefits. So at the time you do the valuation by residual methods, it will at the same time assess the project viability, feasibility, profitability. So it's help the investment decision right away, whether it's worth invest or not. And then it allows allows the developer to analyze different development scenarios, and to identify the optimal use, which we call it highest investment. Shortfalls. So as I said, it needs a complex financial model, and it needs expertise. It requires expertise in financial. For example, you have to understand the market condition, you understand forecasting, you understand discount rate, cap rate, all of the financial terms, and it's very time consuming because you have to collect data all over the market. Another shortfall, which is very important, is that the model relies on assumptions. So it's very sensitivity on the assumption. assumptions here it can be like forecasting the revenue, forecasting the cost, or estimating the timeline of the project. So in conclusion of the methodology, like each of the methodology have a pros and cons, and when we do the valuation to get land price, we have to like balance and we will have to like balance it and reconcile the value between two methods. So all of the regulation about the land valuation is just to derive at the land price. Previous law regulated three concepts: land price framework, land price list, and land specific land price. The framework means or bracket. It presents the mean and the max of the one land use in a region, for example, Red River or Mekong Delta region. And it is issued by state, and every 5 years they will update every 5 years. And it is served as a guidelines for the second concept, price list. The price list is now just a land price for a land use in one location. So it narrowed down from the region to the location. For example, in 2020, the land price list in Nguyễn Huệ will be 162 million per square meter. So it was regulated to build based on the framework, and it will be updated every 5 years. The authority to approve will be built by the provincial people committee and then approved by the people council in provincial level. This is used to estimate the obligation relating to land of under limit area for individuals and families. So this is generally, like it has a list of uses, but this is what I picked out. And the last concept is the specific land price. This is even the narrowest, the value of the land of specific land plot with specific characteristic. Then it will be based on the market, and since it's a specific land price, cannot be issued in advance. Provincial People Committee is the authority to decide the specific land price, and the specific land price is used for estimate obligation for above limit area and individual families and entities. It also serves for the land use right value for the state-owned company when they do the advertisation. So that's the story back into the previous land law 2015. But in 2024, the new land law, they removed the framework, the price framework. Because you see, as you can see here, there's some kind of double system. And as I just mentioned, 165 million per square meter in Nguyễn Huệ, you know that it's not correct at all compared to the real market. So they removed the framework. And for the price list, since no framework, they also required to update it annually, which means that the government wants to align the price list with the market. They adjust it more frequent and has the price list to be like market. They also hope that the price list can go deeper to the land plot, just like this, whenever the cadastral map and the national database land value available. So that's what they expect. The other uses for land price list will be estimating obligation for individuals and families, and estimating property tax, and also estimating the starting price for the auctions. Specific land price in 2024, the big changes is that they have expanded the decision-making authorities. You see, before it was a provincial people committee decided, and now it's split it into like circumstances, different circumstances, still provincial, and district. So now it's expanded to district level. With this, so localized decision making will make it like all the decision will be like prompt, and the district level will know more about the local. They know more about the demand, the conditions, so that they will have a prompt response on the land price. It also estimated obligation for entities and starting price for auction. So as you can see here, in 2024, they will split into like land price list will be used for like individual and families, and specific land price will be used for obligation of entities. This is just a summary of key changes that I just presented, and this is the impact that I also mentioned in each of the impact. So we will expect it to like improve efficiency and transparency, liquidity, more dynamic and responsive approach. Okay, here is the thing. Price list, new thing is that price list will be used for estimating the property tax. So previously, the property tax is estimated based on the price that you put on the SPA between the buyer and seller. But now they don't care about what you put it in. They will adopt the land price list, which they expect it to align with the market. So with that changes, it expected to increase the state budget revenue. So we have more money to invest in infrastructure and everywhere. And since then, one more thing. Price list. Okay, higher compensation is expected. So then previously the compensation is based on the frameworks, the price list, but now the price list is expected to be market, so it will be higher. So higher compensation can lead to higher initial investment, and may lead to like higher value, or higher land value and higher price of the products, real estate products. That would be it for my talk today.